Good morning from Zurich. You're listening to Monocle on Sunday with me, Tyler Brûlé. Coming up on today's program from Dufourstrasse, it's been a while since we've been here. My guest today, Gorana, Grgić, and also Chandra. They're going to have the reviews, of course, of the biggest stories, maybe a couple of wine tips. First, Gorana, welcome. I saw you in London just a few days ago. What should we think about? Maybe main story from the past week, or what should we be thinking about the week ahead?
Hello. Well, the main story, I think, that kicked off the week and rattled a lot of stock markets was the DeepSeek's AI revelation that really shook up a lot of tech giants. So there was certainly something that now seems like ages ago when Trump is slapping tariffs on friends, foes alike. And I think the really main story for the next couple of days will be the retaliation and reverberations across markets around the world. So separate from the one that already started early in the week.
Indeed, yeah. We'll be having probably a lot from Ottawa and also Mexico City, but also we'll be going to Helsinki to hear from our correspondent, Petri Burtsoff.
Finland eyes a massive icebreaker deal with the United States, Estonia wants to tax Baltic shipping, and Sweden convicts a man for drunk driving a drone.
Plus, we'll speak to Christoph Amend, the editorial director of Zeit Magazin, and Aurelia Rauch will be here to talk about all things art-related. It's the 2nd of February 2025, live from Zurich. This is Monocle on Sunday.
Live from Zurich, this is Monocle on Sunday with Tyler Brûlé.
And good morning from a very grey, rather chilly Zurich this morning. The lid is definitely over the lake, but hopefully we'll see some sunshine. I'm going to see some sunshine in a little bit anyway, as soon as we're off air, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Very happy to say, of course, this is our first time back around this table. We've got Desi, of course, our studio manager here in Zurich, looking after us. It's all brand new. Chandra Kurt is looking fresh in a turtleneck this morning. And yeah, listen, I guess I can still say, Gutes Neues, Happy New Year. Wonderful to see you. How have you been, Chandra?
Well, cold, missing the sun, and traveling a lot. I came also back from the north, from Copenhagen, but I'm happy that dry January is over.
Okay, but listen, were you really part of January?
No.
Are you talking from a business perspective that it's over?
Yeah, every
yes.
second person asked me, are you doing? And I kept on saying, well, it's not December, so we are a little bit more moderate, but I didn't do it, no.
Okay. I want to talk about Copenhagen in a moment, but of course, Gorana Grgić is also here as well. Our new security correspondent, listeners, of course, you've already heard her on the radio doing a couple of twirls and also on screen and page as well. Good morning. Very nice to see you.
Good morning, and great to be part of the team in this more elevated or institutionalized status.
Well, yes, institutionalized status. I thought you were going to reflect on London earlier in the week, where we had our Midori Mingler. That was sort of in at the deep end for you, thrown in to, of course, it literally addressed the troops on where the world is going, etc. But yeah, and any standout moments? Maybe not at Midori House, London in general.
Well, in London, the standout was the great weather that I was very sad to leave on Thursday. But in terms of the intellectual kind of exchanges, I think that we really did something amazing, which is the crossover between luxury hotelier business and conflict resolution, and I still look forward to pursuing some sort of interdisciplinary collaboration with one of your friends, Ian Ainsworth, with this whole idea how actually staying at luxury hotels could help or hinder causes like conflict termination.
Well, I should bring in our editor-in-chief, Andrew Tuck, who's in London this morning. Good morning, Andrew. Can you maybe sort of shed some light on this? Because Gorana's being maybe a little bit diplomatic, a little bit cryptic about what happened on stage in London.
Well, we had a very, very good mingler. This is one of these events where we run for the whole team, for the whole company, to bring everyone together, because it's extraordinary how many people are working on a key piece of business or have had some exciting revelation in the world of business that they don't somehow get to share. So it's a way of bringing people together. And we always bring in two guests. And I was delighted that Gorana came to London this week to talk to the team about the impact perhaps Mr. Trump might have on events across the year in China and other places too. But we also had Ian Ainsworth from the Aficionados. I think, Tyler, my favourite bit was when we got the fortune cookies out, because it was Chinese New Year, and we cracked them open, and we gave the cookie idea, or the cookie good fortune, to each of our guests, and they had to kind of interpret it for their worlds. And can I just say, I think Gorana could have a TV show. She was like straight in there with getting laughs and whoops of approval for all of her suggestions.
Well, of course, we have to not leave out our Antipodeans, also our design editor, Nick Manise, because Andrew told this wonderful story about his grandmother, and his grandmother would take him to grand hotels, and obviously she gave him a bit of a taste for the finer things in life. And he really painted this amazing story of a woman who wanted things done properly, and would, she would book hotels for 6 weeks at a time because she wasn't sure when she wanted to leave. And of course, it's just this wonderful story. Chandra sort of, smiling over there as well, because Chandra, you would have loved it, because it was this conversation about a time in hospitality, really sort of, innkeeping that doesn't exist, anymore, where people, of course, want your credit card up front. I mean, of course, he was talking about it, Andrew, right, his grandmother sort of writing letters to the hotels, of course, to make these reservations. But I go back to our designer, Nick Manise, after this beautiful story was painted. He wanted to know if Granny was still alive and could be adopted, or I don't know, or could be an escort. I couldn't quite decide.
Yeah, I think he was offering his services in a way that wasn't entirely appropriate. And then we did discover that Ian's grandmother is still alive. So I think...
Where's Nick? Where Nick is this morning, anyway?
Can I just say that years and years ago, when Nick first joined the Monocle, I got him to go and do a story which was in Milton Keynes, and they had a modernist week, and what they did was they said you can come and stay in one of the early houses that was built in Milton Keynes, and you can stay with a family. And he did actually go and stay with like an 80-plus-year-old lady. And there is a photo of him waking up having toast in her, well, I was going to say in her bed, in her spare bed the next morning. But who knows, Tyler, strange things happen on these reporting trips.
They do. Andrew, we'll start with you this morning. Of course, there's many things going on in the world. Oddly, it seems that every time you sort of read a piece out of the UK press, someone has had a conversation with Washington, and it's interesting, isn't it? We've had a call with Washington, and there's going to be a meeting soon, and I want to bring Gorana in on this as well. I don't know if we're sort of reading the Danish press, if we're looking at the Austrian press as well. This fact that everyone wants that they've had a call with Washington, and there might be probably not a visit very soon, but they're at least going to have a trip to Washington. They're going to have potentially some time, of course, with President Trump. But Andrew, just maybe your view, because we talked a lot, as you said, earlier in the week, of course, about all things Trump-related, some of the upheavals, certainly, some of the rockets that he's launched, figuratively and otherwise. But what's the view from London in terms of course, we've heard, yes, Trump thinks Starmer's. Whatever. I think it was a couple of weeks, or at least last week, he was saying, a good man knows what he's doing, etc. Has that narrative changed?
Well, there's certainly unease in all of the papers this morning, and you get the sense that, so the papers on the right, they don't want Starmer realigning with the EU, but there is this reset meeting coming up, and there's a suggestion as beginning by April or May, we may begin to see some of the fruition of this reset. So that's around everything from security to migration to trade to culture, whether we will allow artists to tour more easily, for example, in the EU and vice versa. So the papers on the right are saying, don't align yourself with the EU. And there was an extraordinary quote in the Telegraph, actually. Andrew Griffith, who's the shadow business secretary, he said he's warned Starmer not to risk the president's wrath. Now, it's extraordinary if the Tories are saying that they're going to put together their proposals to navigate these choppy waters based on the fact that they are scared of Trump, because it's interesting, for all all the problems that Trudeau has had, and what you might think of leadership south of the border as well, that both have come out very strongly and hit back immediately on this tariffs. And you get a sense that in some of the things that the Tories are saying today, that actually they don't know that they would be able to stand up to anything that Mr. Trump asked of them. So it's interesting what the right is saying, and on the left, of course, or on the more centrist papers, they're saying it's time to hurry up and get a deal done with the EU, because without that we're going to be stuck, and that the notion that the Americans are going to give us a trade deal quickly just isn't realistic.
Gorana, let's first maybe your impressions of London, aside from the weather, the conversation with colleagues there as well. I mean, as Andrew's saying, it's fascinating too, of course. just even spool back 12 hours ago, what we heard out of Ottawa, etc. The options, of course, that Canada has, for example, are considerably stronger than, let's say, the UK and many other countries have. Of course, they talk about sort of the Canadian nuclear option, which, of course, is electricity, and from the grid out of Quebec and Ontario. What that can mean, there can be certainly a much harder punchback if they really want to go down that route. But maybe let's focus on just London v Washington at the moment.
Well, I think London, but in general, I think across U.S. allies and partners, the kind of options are twofold, right? There is the side where you cave into the pressure and you make concessions and considerable concessions, or the other way, you try to resist. And in doing so, I would say the best path forward would be one where you actually start coordinating and cooperating with other allies and partners, because in that way, and that's the only way that you can actually have some leverage vis-a-vis US. We saw actually last week already with the attempt from Colombian government to actually try to kind of stave off and to basically mount some sort of resistance to Trump, and that didn't go down well with the Trump administration, and they in the end yielded. But I think now, given all the announcements and again the kind of the foreshadowing of what might come, there would be a case to make for UK, EU, Canada to start thinking about how they could actually join forces while not necessarily going back into the route for UK, of course, of like signing any agreements with the EU, but, simply as countries that are like-minded and that are, at the end of the day, all going to be facing some sort of trade wrath from Washington. Because I think if there is one thing that we learned from the first Trump administration, and this is one lesson that actually is being pushed by one former Australian Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, who was very hard on Trump in the early days, even though Australia has a special kind of place, and I can talk about that. But the point that he makes repeatedly, he had a piece in Foreign Affairs a couple of months ago, is that with Trump, you need to meet him with strength. You don't yield, because if you do, that just invites further sort of attacks and will elicit even further concessions. So if they are serious about, protecting their economies, their citizens, I think that there is a value in coordinating the response and not necessarily doing these transactional deals, even though they are tempting, because ultimately it is a race to the bottom. And again, these tariffs, once trade wars start, it's not just disruptive for the partners in that particular exchange, it starts becoming disruptive for global trade flows in general.
Okay, so I have to bring, of course, our most important analyst in on this point, Chandra, when it comes to wine. When you're talking to your friends across Europe and elsewhere, has there been any sense over, of course, the past weeks as we sort of maybe look to Europe and what could happen, that vineyard owners are also fearful of tariffs?
Well, it is a big stress going around because, of course, there will be tax implications also for wine imports to the US, and Europe produces the most amount of wine, so they need export markets, and what happens now with the US will be a big problem. And then I have to say again, Switzerland is a wonderful country because they don't really export, so they do 2% that they export.
So we're going to be fine. Emma, back in London, you heard this. We're going to be fine in Switzerland.
And because the production covers only half of the consumption, so we will always import, so we will get anyway privileged maybe conditions. But I must say, for the big producing country like Spain, Italy, or France, it is not going to be simple. And there will be maybe some less wine in the US, but maybe it's time to empty all the cellars, and then Americans will also miss French wine.
That sounds like very good news. Listen, we're at the part of the program. Of course, listeners, if you're new to this show, you'll know, of course, whenever Chandra's on, we do a bit of a spin around the bureaus and the tables, or the table here, of course, to ask people, maybe what they would like to have on a Sunday evening, or maybe in their cellar a little bit later in the week. The person who's been at this long, well, I'm not sure whether it's Emma or Andrew who's been at this the longest, but Emma, I'm going to start with you because, why not? Because I know that you like a glass of wine now and then.
I do. Thank you so much, Tyler. Good morning, Chandra. Lovely to have you. So all I can hear is stories of Trump flooding the zone and tariffs, and it's all going to be a long haul. So as people empty their cellars and we brace ourselves, what can I drink that's going to sustain me for 4 years?
Okay, that's clear. Chandra sort of looked sort of a little bit stunned there for a moment, but I think she was just, already sort of processing and thinking about the order and how quickly they can get it to you. Emma, does that sound fine?
That's fine. I mean, we may as well start with a sort of a daily shot of schnapps just to get us going.
Okay, I'm also happy to say that today we're bringing in, of course, a Monocle patron, friend of the family, friend of Dufostrasse, the photographer, Jonathan Ducrest is here. Jonathan, good morning. Very nice to see you.
Good morning. Good to see you back in Zurich too.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to exchange some notes about Lech in a moment. But yes, what's the brief to Chandra this morning?
So I had a semi-dry January. I couldn't quite commit to a full dry January, and I wanted to get your opinion on a great bottle under 40 Swiss francs to sort of celebrate being in February.
Why the price point?
It's
just economizing top of the year. Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Chandra, is that good?
Yep.
You got that? Okay, Andrew.
We had our mingler this week in London, and we had some nice wine. But I wondered what would be your suggestion for, as Jonathan's saying, we're getting back out in the world. January's over. The light is slowly returning. A good bottle to take to a very simple thing to take to a party, to take to as a gift. What's something you pull out of the cabinet and thinking, okay, this is going to be a nice thing to hand over as a present.
Okay, perfect.
And finally, Gorana, do you see how the game works, right? So what are you thinking?
God, I'm so boring. I would ask, maybe related to London, actually. Could you recommend us some wines out of Lebanon or Portugal? Actually, we were looking at the East and West Mediterranean kind of sparring and who does what better. So that would be a question of what would you choose from these two places?
But in wine, there's never one doing better than the other. Everybody has an explanation.
So I asked the wrong question.
I like this. Anyway, so I think, so if you want sort of, we're thinking of extremities. You're thinking,
exactly.
Yes, the extreme, obviously east, the extreme east of the Mediterranean, going beyond the mouth of the Med onto the Atlantic with Portugal. Okay, very good. We're going to go to Helsinki now. Our correspondent, Petri Burtsoff, is there this morning with all kinds of tales. But Petri, you might as well sort of jump right in as well. So I'm not even sure. Can you buy alcohol in a store on a Sunday in Finland that's not bootleg?
No, you can't. I'm afraid. Sundays, as you know, it's an alcohol monopoly in Finland. Only designated stores are able to sell alcohol, and they're all closed on Sundays. So 1 day of rest and 6 days of drinking.
Okay, so on that, whether it's for your day of rest or day of drinking, what kind of recommendation would you like from Chandra this morning?
Okay, so I have a very specific one. So I have some friends who hunt, and they've given me some venison meat, and I'm planning to cook a very hearty stew. And picture this, so it's like minus 10 degrees Celsius outside, snowing, and I light up a fire in the fireplace, cook the stew for like 5 and 6 hours. I just need a really nice bottle of red to go with a venison stew.
I like this picture. Is the venison also just bubbling away in the fireplace?
I'm not that advanced. No, I just have an oven for that.
Okay, you're really sort of painting a picture there, Andrew. I'm sure you're loving this as well. I mean, this kind of Lapland image. Because do we reach you in Helsinki today, or are you in Salo today? Where are you today?
I'm in Salo, which says absolutely nothing to the listeners, but it's a small town 1 hour outside of Helsinki. Its kind of shot to fame was 10, 20 years ago when it was the hometown of a small Finnish mobile phone maker called Nokia. So that's what people mostly associate Salo with. But otherwise, just a small town on the south coast where I happen to be from. So I'm visiting some relatives here, but heading back to Helsinki tonight.
Okay, very good. Gorana's giving a lot of nods on Salo. Were you nodding for Nokia reasons, or there past boyfriends? I don't know.
No, I was nodding for Salo because I thought it was a different Salo on Lago di Garda. So
okay, she is way south. Sorry, so
I'm in another country altogether, but there is a Salo.
There is a Salo at the bottom of Lago di Garda. Okay, have you been there, Petri?
History.
I have, of course. I was previously the Rome correspondent, so I've been there. And of course, a lot of history. People who know Italian history know this and might have seen the Pasolini film as well. But yeah, different Salo without the accent in the end.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so what's making news? Whether if I was watching Estonian television today, reading Helsingin Sanomat, Kauppalehti, what's the news?
Yeah, so if you sort of read Finnish media, Helsingin Sanomat, Kauppalehti, so the biggest news item is this icebreaker deal, or a potential icebreaker deal. We've of course heard Trump announce that the U.S. is planning to order 40 icebreakers. That's the biggest icebreaker order ever in the history of icebreakers, basically. And Finland just happens to be one of the top icebreaker producing countries in the world. So of course, Finland is eyeing this deal, but I mean, at the same time, Canada is one of the top producers, and then Russia produces a lot, but of course, that's a no-go at the moment. Plus, the Russian icebreakers are nuclear powered and armed, so I don't know if Trump wants any of those. But basically, Finland is just eyeing this massive deal. But at the same time, Finnish producers in Rauma and in Helsinki, the shipyard in Helsinki is actually owned by Canadians, this company called Davy. But they're saying that this, producing 40 new icebreakers, that's going to take decades. This is completely unrealistic. And then I read this piece in the Forbes saying that there's with all the talk of trade wars going on, this might also be a tool to sort of leverage especially the Canadians, that they could maybe move some of the production from Canada and from Helsinki to the US. But this is making the headlines in Finland.
Just Gorana, just on that, just quickly on that point of course, manufacturing sovereignty, we see that, of course, yes, the U.S., of course, most of the arms industry is on U.S. soil. Of course, they do procure things from elsewhere. But when it comes to shipbuilding, there's a huge discussion about, of course, will America be able to maintain it? Of course, you also have some foreign ownership in shipyards. Is this also going to be a big theme and topic? I can't imagine that, that we're going to see sort of America Incorporated handing over a massive order. And then there'll be a lot of Finnish jobs created.
Defense industrial base is going to be and continue going to be a big topic, not just in the United States, but also over here across Europe. I think already in the first Trump administration, there was a huge emphasis on bringing back the jobs actually in the shipbuilding industry across especially the northeast stretch of the Atlantic. And in that sense, I think that now there are even worries that some of the deals that have already been promised, for instance, again, referring back to Australia, but the AUKUS deal with the submarines being pillar one of that particular deal, there has been some skepticism because U.S. is currently not pumping out enough of the Virginia-class submarines that are needed to basically maintain the kind of balance with China. And there are worries now that even with some of the deals that have been struck, that United States might actually renege on this particular part, because Trump administration might be reluctant to share it even with some of its closest allies. So in that sense, in terms of where the jobs might be and where the focus might lie, it is safe to assume that the Trump administration is going to want to keep a lot of things domestically, and even if it invests again to basically get a lot out of those deals if they are offshore.
I think, Andrew, I just was thinking when you heard about that stew and the fireplace, not that you're maybe big on a venison stew, but you must have, I know you must have a question for Petri.
I've got a couple. Well, we'll ask that one at the end because a former Finnish colleague of ours used to arrive back with tins of bear meat. I'd like to know whether the bear meat is still on the shelf in the supermarket. But I just wanted to ask a more serious one, actually, Petri, because it's interesting in this moment. We're talking everyone about aligning with what Mr. Trump wants and being pushed into order. But Finland seems to be doing lots of rather different things at the moment. I know the parties on the left are doing better than the populist parties on the right, seemingly, in some of the polls. That you're still announcing more aid for Ukraine, that you're still pushing ahead with hydrogen power and clean energy. When you sit in Finland, does it feel like you sit in a plucky country, the country that's going against what's happening elsewhere, often in the world?
That's a really good question, Andrew. In a way, yes, it does. We're sort of bucking the trend when sort of looking around both Europe and the rise of the right-wing parties, but then especially the US. It seems like the world is going the other way. I mean, mind you, we do have the populist right in the government, but their polling is just sinking all the time, and the support for the left and the Greens is going up, and we have a very liberal, globalist-minded president, Mr. Alexander Stubb. So it just seems like we're kind of traveling the other way, and if you don't mind me saying, I don't mind at all.
Well, and just finally, do you still have those tins of bear meat in the supermarket?
No, you must be talking about Mr. Markus Hipp. Markus is listen. In case he's listening, he's from the north, so who knows? He might have hunted the bear himself. We don't have bear meat in the supermarket in the south.
Andrew, listen, but hold on. Andrew, you're not crazy, and I don't think it came from the north, because I can recall, and maybe it came off the supermarket shelves at Stockman only a few years ago, but I can recall there was. Listen, Petri, you have to go back to the delicacy aisle and have another look, because there was definitely sort of canned bear luncheon meat, and with actually very, very good branding as well, and not just one brand. I think there was like 3 brands.
Okay. Tyler, are you sure that you didn't mistake it? Because we have a beer that is branded Bear Beer.
No,
okay.
Definitely not. Petri, maybe just before we go, did you watch Melodifestivalen last night? Of course, this is the sort of the forerunner. It's the national competition in Sweden, of course, where they pick their Eurovision contestant, and Finland. Of course, I think I'll get the pronunciation. Is it Kerja, your contestant from 23?
Garia, yeah, the one with the green sleeves,
the funny trousers. Well, yeah, he sort of swapped the big sleeves for sort of trousers to match yesterday. Anyway, he made his appearance last night on Melodifestivalen. Just before we go, who are they tipping? Have you chosen your Eurovision finalist to represent your nation here in Switzerland in a few months?
I think they had one of the semifinals on last night. Sadly, I didn't watch because I was at actually a wine festival of all things last night, and I haven't checked who won that. But I think we're going to do that in very soon in the coming weeks.
Very good. Petri Burtsoff in Salo in Finland, not on Lake Garda. Andrew Tuck back in London. Just before we go, Andrew, we move into production week. We have a March issue to get out the door, in the next 7 days. Little highlights, just to, of course, not spoiler, but what are we working on?
We're celebrating what happens in restaurants after midnight, not in the cleaning up sense, in the people who still believe in the world of late night dining. I think we're heading to the Panama Canal, a last minute interview that we have there. We'll put the spotlight on some of the things we've been talking about today. And we have our property survey. It's looking at what's happening around the world with property developers, but in the sense of how they make communities, how individual projects can set the beat for a whole city if they're done right.
Very good. Andrew Tuck, I'll see you later in the week in Paris, which is also a project which is very much underway. That was our editor-in-chief, Andrew Tuck, in London. Also in London, Emma Nelson is there with the news headlines.
Thank you very much indeed, Tyler. Both Canada and Mexico say they're preparing retaliatory measures after President Trump signed an order imposing tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico and China. There'll be a levy of 25% on goods coming in from Canada and Mexico, though the rate on Canadian oil will be 10%. There'll be an additional 10% tax on China. The Russian and Ukrainian military are blaming each other after an airstrike on a part of Russia occupied by Ukraine. 4 people died and dozens more were trapped under rubble following the strikes on a boarding school. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will discuss the second stage of the ceasefire with Hamas during a meeting this week with Donald Trump. Mr. Netanyahu will be the first foreign leader to visit the White House since Mr. Trump took office. And if you're listening to this in Switzerland, there is absolutely no need to panic right now. But here is a gentle reminder that at 1:30 this coming Wednesday, the 5th of February, you'll hear this. That's the sound of the annual test of the country's general alert. Switzerland's 5,000 stationary and 2,000 mobile sirens make up one of the broadest national networks of civil defence sirens in the world. It's unique because it covers both urban and rural regions with mobile sirens installed on the top of cars. And those are the headlines. Back to you, Tyler, in Switzerland. Braced, I imagine.
Indeed. Chandra, do you have a siren on top? You feel like you have one of those sort of vintage houses or buildings that you live in that might have a siren on top of the roof. Have you seen it? I mean, I know you've got many devices to scare away the birds that you don't like, but...
We fight it against it. We don't have it.
You don't have it?
No.
Okay.
No. But we are fighting the birds. This is another story.
This is a whole other world. Okay, Gorana, we hear the sirens, of course. They'll be this Wednesday. If we sort of think about geopolitical threats to Switzerland, does this country have much to worry about? And you could sort of laugh. I mean, of course, we've seen in many countries that alerts, of course, now come on mobile phones. But then, I can remember maybe it was a few years ago when you see the civil defense mobilized here. You see sort of young gentlemen sort of going up ladders, and there are even hand crank versions in case the whole grid goes down. So. Are they crazy? Are they overreacting? Or maybe they should be prepared as they are?
Well, if the name of the game in terms of international security these days is that we are back to more competitive and sort of uncertain and unstable times, then you should do absolutely everything to have resilient and prepared population. So on that note, seeing what is happening actually all around Europe, just over, if you look in Germany, they're now starting to count how many bunkers there are, who could transform their garage into a bunker and so on. That was actually a story from just a couple of weeks ago. Then there is no love there. And I think that there is a value in having these things in place, because once an event happens, of course, it's too late. In terms of the main sort of threats or challenges, if you wish, there are different types. Of course, we can talk about things that all of Europe is these days subjected to as a consequence of Russia's invasion and war in Ukraine. So whether these would be things that are sort of below the threshold types of activities, from sabotages to cyber attacks and everything in between. And then various other things that, again, you can talk about in terms of redefining the way that we talk about in general security, right? Whether it's things that might emanate from the country or are part of like transnational networks, so criminal activities or transnational terrorism that might find offshoots even in Switzerland and so on, but not to scare people. Again, I think that if you take a look at the various security policy strategies and papers that Switzerland has published so far, I think that there is a great awareness of these things. Now, the question is what Switzerland can do about them and what it is doing about it. And I think that the consensus is, while there is a lot of preparation that goes on in the country, I will refer back to an unpopular thing that a former U.S. ambassador said. Switzerland kind of acts as this hole in the donut of European security. And then in that sense, what it can do actually to make itself better prepared and better able to respond to these threats by cooperating more with countries in the EU and, of course, with NATO member states. And it actually is doing that. So, for instance, just recently, Switzerland has joined some of the projects that European Union permanent structured cooperation on security. This PESCO is doing things like military mobility, allowing actually the movement of military troops across Switzerland, again in line with Switzerland's long-standing stance on neutrality, or participating in various exercises in terms of cyber, because I think that this particular domain, while it's not necessarily discussed so much in the open, is one huge component these days of security. So there are those things, and again, they're not necessarily connected to the alarm that will be sounded on Wednesday, but it is part of that bigger puzzle.
And I think once, maybe cynically, recently you said as well, Switzerland has, in its favor, does have mountains as well from a defense point of view, and cash, or other people's cash as well, also helps at the same time. It is just coming up to 10:40 here in Zurich, 18:40 if you are listening in Tokyo, and of course 9:40 if you're listening in Lisbon or even in London. I'm very happy to say that we're heading a little bit north, not as far as Finland, but we're heading to the northern stretches of Germany. Christoph Amend, the editorial director of Die Zeit, is there for us this morning, and I'm very happy to have you on the line. Guten Morgen.
Guten Morgen, Tyler. Hello, everyone.
I have the this week's edition of Zeit Magazin in front of me. One of your famous double covers as well, and you have your foreign minister Annalena Baerbock is on the cover, looking incredibly grumpy. And I mean, if you sort of said sourpuss, and this would she would be sort of the poster child for that term. And then we get sort of a more smiling version of her, a more engaged. Yes, maybe slightly more open version of Frau Baerbock. Just the thinking behind the cover, because it's one of these things that Zeit Magazin does incredibly well.
Well, thank you. My dear colleagues at the magazine, Emilia Smichowski and Sasha Chaimowitz, the two editors, ran this cover story this week. It was a long-term project. We decided 5 years ago to meet the foreign minister twice a year, and Tina Hillebrand, who's the writer, the political editor of Die Zeit, was doing this story in the interviews, and I think it gives you sort of a rather intimate insight into what politics actually can do to a human being being a top politician. And it's quite moving to see how she kind of struggles with being a top politician. So it's a great interview that Tina did.
And just going through, because this was only thrown in front of me just before we went on air, but of course this is very much in real time, and of course we've had some thoughts and reflections, of course, about Germany and Germany's role in the world. I mean, even you maybe heard a few minutes ago, of course, the counting of. Have you been involved in the counting of any bunkers in and around Berlin yet?
Not yet. I mean, this story has been in the news media for a couple of months, maybe even years. So there are actually people doing that. I doubt it's a mass movement, to be honest.
No, I think it's rather niche territory. Let's talk about the built environment, maybe not bunkers, things above ground, because I think certainly the biggest news, that hit our screens this week, and there's a congratulations in order. But Zeit is going to move into the physical retail, maybe even coffee serving realm. And I should sort of say, get off my patch, man. But I'm thrilled that you're doing it. I think more people need to, but we can come back to that conversation in a moment.
Yes, I mean, we're launching Zeit Cafe in Berlin, which is the second cafe. There's also one in Hamburg in our publishing house, which is also a public Zeit Cafe. But in Berlin, we're moving into a very beautiful building. It's a 1950s former petrol station, beautiful building, and it's owned by the gallerist Jörg Judin. It's been one of my favorite spots in Berlin for a long time. As you know, Berlin is a very exciting city, maybe not the most beautiful one we have in Europe, but this is an absolutely gem. It's a building hidden between beautiful trees. There's a small pond with fishes, and you can have your cup of coffee sitting outside in the summertime, especially. being really hidden from the noises of the city. So we're very happy to move in and to host events, to record some of our podcasts there with a small audience and serve coffee, and also offer our selection of the newspaper, the magazines, the books, and other items that we have on sale from Zeit. And yeah, it's been one of my favorite spots in the city for years. So I'm very happy that we were able to move in May the 1st.
Is this part of a preservation project, and not a media preservation project? But that could, of course, be part of it for all of us. But is this a Denkmalschutz? This is also a listed building, because it is, as you say, it is absolutely beautiful. I hope it is preserved. And do we see any upgrades, or are you allowed to touch anything?
Well, you're not allowed to touch the building itself, and to be honest with you, I wouldn't want to touch it, because it's as you say, it's absolutely beautiful. And we're really happy to move in at this during Gallery Weekend in Berlin, and to welcome our visitors. And the reaction, to be honest, I'm still quite surprised at how euphoric people reacted to the fact that we're opening up this Zeit Cafe. And I think it also kind of resonates with the fact that especially in our digital times, I mean, I don't have to explain it to you. You've been doing this at Monocle for so many years. So we're all looking for physical spaces to meet, and to meet like-minded people. So this is a small step for us, but we're very happy to do it.
And just when we think about, as you said, to consume, of course, the paper, the magazines, the books, etc. If I can ask you, Herr Editorial Director, what's coming up for as we move into spring? And when you think about the offer, I mean, aside from what you're doing week in and week out, your colleagues on Zeit Magazine itself, what can we look forward to in terms of new launches? Of course, much loved titles that are going to be coming back. Maybe 2 or 3 highlights for us.
Well, Zeit Magazine Mann is currently in production. My dear colleague Johannes Ducak, the executive editor, is working on the issue, which will come out in spring. And we're launching a new project called Zeit Kunst, Zeit Art, which will be part of the weekly edition of Die Zeit. It's going to be a big project printed on very beautiful white paper, and it's going to be part of the edition of Die Zeit late in the end of late of April, and will be featuring some of the most famous artists in the world. And it's a print party, as I would call it. We're celebrating art, publishing some new pieces on our beautiful product, and it's on the big format. And I think, and I hope it will show that in our digital times we can enjoy the party of print.
Listen, I have to bring a guest in earlier, because this is someone you met on stage back at the Créon just before Christmas. Aurelia Rauch is here. Christoph, she's the chief experience officer at Bergos Bank. She's been nodding. She just heard white. She heard big format, and she heard art, and she heard party. And she's nodding away. Good morning. Very nice to see you, Aurelia. Are you excited about this project?
Good morning, Tyler. Hi. It's so good to hear you again. I cannot tell you how much I am excited about this. I really feel that art has been not underappreciated in print, but there is a little bit of this lack of good art criticism, a very good, kind of eye on projects that are maybe not happening in the major spaces or in the major galleries. So I'm extremely excited about this party.
So Christoph, when can we look forward to 2 things? Because we're going to move along here at speed. Opening. So when is the opening date for the new space in Berlin? And of course this is in lockstep, of course, with the launch of the title. When is all of this happening?
Zeit Kunst will be published April the 24th. We're going to have a little party for you. So if you want to come over. At Studio 1111 on Potsdamer Straße, and the Zeit Café will be open to public the 1st of May. So please come over.
And we can, of course, at some point on a Sunday, do a joint broadcast, Monocle on Sunday, Monocle am Sonntag, and Zeit Mag.
Oh, absolutely. Let's do that. That's a handshake.
Okay, very good. Christoph Amend, editorial director of Zeit Mag up in Berlin for us this morning. Thank you very, very much. Chandra, just hearing about large format print, of course, you're doing the Wine Cellar. You're in the world of magazines as well. And I wanted to ask you just on this thematic, because of course we see sort of this boom in art publishing, but I'm wondering, is there a bit of a boom also going in wine publishing? Because I feel I've just seen more supplements coming out, and I'm not sure if this is, people just like, okay, they're just looking for more advertising pages, and let's do whatever we can, of course, with this sector of the industry, or are things rather sort of flat at the moment? How do you see it?
The good thing is that you always can follow the art, watch the art, and then follow the wine. So when the art goes up and the art is more interesting, the wine will follow, because also in the investment point, they always are very close together. Of course, there is a big discussion initiated by the WHO about that drinking every glass is killing you, but there's a movement against this now, and this is good.
Well, I mean, of course it's good. I'd love to know who that movement is as well. Anyway, really very nice to see you as well. It was great just hearing, of course, from Christoph. I'm keen, as much as we were sort of talking about what they've got coming up in the Zeit Mag world. Part of your beat at the bank, of course, is looking at the world of art. We sort of move into a season right now. We've got Hong Kong coming up. If you think about there's so much to do. If Aurelia's top three, what do people have to think about between now and, let's say, end of June? What should people be thinking about in terms of either larger scale, smaller scale? Where should we be booking?
Oh, well, okay. So that is kind of a wide time frame there, Tyler. I would say it's very local and then kind of very far away. My highlights. We just came back from the beautiful Engadin, which is an area here in Switzerland, known to many of us here in Zurich, of course, from beautiful skiing resort. St. Moritz is over there. But it has been really a very big hub for art, which sometimes is underappreciated. And the art scene there is flourishing and doing wonderful things. And at the moment, there's one show in particular that really bears testament to how rich and wonderful this area has been for a long time. Hauser & Wirth has done a wonderful job at getting a Basquiat exhibition together there. And it's not only stunning work and, of course, very important and really worth seeing from just simply between you and the art kind of standpoint. It bears witness to how long a particular person there, Bruno Bischofberger, has been involved in this incredibly international art scene. And he has brought, being from Switzerland, he has brought artists from New York, namely Basquiat, Warhol, you name it really, the big artists of the 80s who were working in New York, there to the Engadin, experiencing a completely different way of life, a completely different way of seeing the world. And the work really that has been produced there, especially by Basquiat, is on view at the moment at Hauser & Wirth, and it is really wonderful to see. There's one work, for example, that I thought was so wonderful, being made in the 80s. The artist shows Bischofberger himself in a little car in a forest, completely rural, and then he has this exaggerated car telephone, one of those old, really big ones with the curly little line going up. So it's really lovely how he must have thought about this place as being extremely traditional and also extremely forward. And yeah, it's really worth seeing.
So that's obviously one. That is one, obviously, that people can look forward to now. Looking over the horizon and maybe beyond the Engadin. Of course, Nomad is also coming up as well. So you could stay in the Engadin if you wanted. So that's, of course, in a few weeks. But maybe just your view on Hong Kong. Of course, a lot of people talking about complexity around it. Still, if you're in that part of the world, worth seeing, and of course, what lies beyond that?
Hong Kong has always had its little bit of its own dynamic that has increased since COVID quite significantly. So the art market, especially in China, Hong Kong, the entire Asian realm, has a different taste maybe than you see in America. It's been more and more visible there. So I'm excited to see. I'm not going to go to Hong Kong, but I'm really very much looking forward to reports there. I did just see a very local fair, which was Art Genève, and then of course what's coming up in terms of art fairs, not to be missed, is because you set the time frame to be June, of course, is Art Basel in Basel, which is happening early June. But could I add one show across the pond, really, that's opening soon too? Because Christoph just noticed or mentioned so much about Berlin. A Berlin-based artist called Anne Imhoff, who's been really a wonderful player in the international art scene for many years now. She's doing a show at the Armory building in New York, which is opening in March. And I'm really trying to get my travel schedule worked around that, because I think that's going to be one for the books, really. It's going to be a huge show. The Armory building is the biggest indoor venue in New York City. Very historic, kind of Upper East Side, if you would already call that area there that. And it's space alone can carry so much significance in terms of art. And Anne Imhoff's show is going to be called Doom. And I was nodding along when you guys, Gorana, when you were talking about the state of the world. Maybe this is a little bit of a parallel there. The subtitle, though, is called House of Hope. So maybe, we can find some solace in there. It's going to be many, many performance artists, much dance. And Anne Imhoff, if you Google her, it's quite intense. The work is really quite severe. So if you can manage to get yourself to New York for that, I would think that that's an amazing thing to see this year.
Aurelia Rauch, thank you very, very much for the tips. Maybe there's going to be some more tips coming up right now, because we want to go back to Chandra, because Chandra, it was the biggest, I think, laundry list that you've ever had of people looking for wine tips this week. But let's start. Emma, you're standing by. You were looking for, on the topic of doom, potentially.
Well,
tell me what you're looking for.
Something to shield me from 4 years of being sort of tested, I think we can imagine, by the machinations of the Trump administration and trade problems and, where do we begin? So we need something to sort of strengthen us. I need a little stiffener, Chandra, but over a long while.
I don't have a doom wine, but I have a 40 Pista, which sounds a little bit similar, so out of order, I don't know. And it's from the Dolomites, from a very good family producer, Foradori. It's orange wine, and just every day you open it using 40 Pista. Anyway, everything is out of order, so enjoy the glass of wine.
Thank you very much indeed.
Excellent. How much will a case set Emma back, would you say? What are we talking per bottle?
About, let's say, 28 something.
Okay, Emma, the budget will stretch to that, I think.
Well, we're in it for 4 years, Chandra. So I wonder, do they do bulk exports before any trade tariffs come in?
Go to visit them. Maybe they can make a good deal.
Excellent.
Okay, I'll take you with me.
Okay, Gorana, what were you looking for?
I was looking for. I was told that there is no bad wine from anywhere, or there is no competition. But I was looking for tips: East Med, West Med, or Mid-Atlantic kind of competition. What would be your top entries?
So as we go to print with our next issue on Tuesday, and the cover story is Amorim family, the Portuguese family, and I visited them. So they have 3 wineries, and I recommend very much the Taboa Aldella from the Dao region, the National Grape, Touriga Nacional. But you will find good wines also in Lebanon.
Yeah, and can I just say, Chandra, I was with the Amorims for dinner on Tuesday. It was Monday in Paris, and they will also be available as well at the new cafe in Paris as well. So yes, you'll have to come for a little bit of an unveiling there. Jonathan Ducres is here. Jonathan, what did you want from Chandra?
So a good bottle to celebrate being, in February, also not being in America anymore, but in Switzerland, to tie up with Emma's theme, under 40 Swiss francs.
Yeah, so there's a pretty young winery from the Bielersee called Silu Wines, and they fill their bottles, they call it just Chasselas, just Bubbles, just Sauvignon Blanc. And my favorite was the Just Roquette. It's a Nobling, it's a new kind of varietal, and it's 39 Swiss francs. You're just on
right on, lick it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Get 2, amazing. Andrew Tuck, very quickly let's do this in 30 seconds or less. Andrew.
It was a bottle to mingle with.
So it's called L'Hospitalet, hospitality. It's from Gérard Bertrand. His wines fit really in every situation, so you will be safe.
Do you want to be safe? That wasn't part of the brief. You wanted to mingle.
And is he called General?
It's called L'Hospitalet. So you have a good hospitality gift.
I thought he was called a general. I thought we had some military chief coming in to make my wine.
We can also find that
as well.
Gorana can find that. Okay, Aurelia, we have to apologise. You missed out on this, but you can get an invite from everybody. I mean, Jonathan's right beside you, so hopefully that can sort of fit the bill. We're going to have to leave it there, everyone. That's all the time we have for today. A huge thank you to our security correspondent, Grgić, Chandra Chandra, Kurt, of course, always here with a few great wine tips. Emma Nelson back in London. Petri Burtsoff up in Salo. Of course, Christoph Amend, Aurelia Rauch, good to see you. And of course, our producer today, Desiree Bandley, and Emma Nelson, and also back in London, David Stevens, looking after things. We are going to be coming to Desi, Paris next week, I believe. It's going to be a premiere for our Paris space, so we look forward to everyone listening in from there. Have a good week, everyone. This has been Monocle on Sunday. Goodbye.